All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, folks, today we're going to talk about Keefe D. I'm sure everybody saw, but after 27 years, they finally made an arrest in connection to the murder of Tupac Shakur, and it was 60-year-old Keefe D. They arrested him while he was taking a walk near his Las Vegas home. He was supposed to be in court for the first time for arraignment last week, the big first appearance, but his lawyer he hired didn't show up. Just no call, no showed. So they were like, all right, let's postpone the arraignment, I guess, until November 2nd. I was going to wait for the first court appearance to see what direction everything was going before this video. I wonder if Keefe D was like, dude, you missed the arraignment? How is that even possible? You hung me out to dry. I was standing up there alone looking like an idiot. What the hell? The lawyer's like, sorry, Keefe, that's my bad. I wrote it down on the wrong day on my calendar. I've been a bit scatterbrained recently. Scatterbrained? What? My lawyer's scatterbrained? Oh, God. That would actually be a funny 90s sitcom. Like, he's a lawyer in the big city. Your Honor, I object. But also, he's scatterbrained. Aren't you supposed to be in court? That's today, coming to must-see TV Thursdays. It's Scatterbrained Lawyer. Has anybody seen my case files? All right. So I'm going to tell this story. We're going to start with Keefe D. There's a few elements of this story that are truly unbelievable and make it one for the books. And one of them, as we'll see as the story unfolds, how lucky Sean Diddy Puff Daddy Combs, I don't know what he's going by these days, how lucky he got with how things played out. Because if a few bizarre moments go differently, I think Sean Puff Daddy Combs is in the same situation as Keefe D, in an orange jumpsuit trying to get a lawyer for the first big appearance. But let's start with Keefe D. In the 80s and early 90s, Keefe D had a classic, stereotypical movie-style drug dealer come up. He was selling a bunch of coke in Compton. He was a member of the South Side Compton Crips. And at one point, someone he was hanging out with noticed he got all of his coke from a bunch of different places and he had to pay up front for it. And the friend goes, you have to drive to all these different places to get your product? Let me set you up. I know this guy, this Colombian guy. I think he can really help your operation. So Keefe D gets set up with the Colombian, and the Colombian connect, apparently one of Pablo Escobar's guys, but he's one of my favorite characters in this story. Keefe D described him as, they called him the devil. He was so lucky, they said, that they thought he had to have made some deal with the devil. They'd go gambling with him. And most people, maybe you win a little bit, you go on a run, and then you lose it, and then you lose everything, and you go home sad. The Colombian Connect would just win, and then keep winning, and the chip stack would just get bigger, and everyone's going, when is he going to lose? And then he'd come back the next day, and it would keep going. They're like, who is this guy? The Colombian Connect. But apparently he brought Keefe D to an apartment, and all of the cabinets in the kitchen were packed full of neatly stacked Colombian cocaine. And he goes, you don't have to pay up front. We're going to front the whole thing. And so that changed Keefe D's operation a lot. And he had the classic movie come up where he's buying all the suits and the Rolexes and the hat and the whole thing. And Keefe D's nephew is also a very active Southside Compton Crip, and his name was Orlando Anderson. And they're doing the grimy gang life. It's interesting, Keefe D has done a bunch of interviews over the last 10 years. That's why he's in the position he is. He really blabbed his mouth into these charges, but we'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But Vlad, the infamous Vlad TV show here on YouTube, he's interviewed Keefe D and a bunch of older guys that lived the same drug dealer life. They were the gangsters. They call themselves gangsters and street legends. But in the interviews, there's always a sadness, even though they call themselves gangster and they act cool. Yeah, I was selling coke. Keefe D calls it birds. I was selling birds. Probably says birds like 40 times in one interview. That's, I guess, a kilo of coke. Yeah, I was selling birds. And so they're talking about it, but there's a sadness that it hits them, I think, at some point, like, man, I have some brains and I have smarts and I have these skills. I can organize people and solve problems and manage money, and I could have done anything. I didn't have to sell coke and PCP, because it hits them as they get older. I was really successful, but at what price? Everybody's missing teeth in my community, and a crackhead, and Uncle Steve is missing all of his teeth, and my neighbor's dead, and I think it can really affect them as they start to get older, and they think, I could have done anything. I have legitimate skills. I didn't have to go that route, and I could have done something that helped the community instead of disastrously hurt it. But this is Keefe D. This is the good years. He's buying the Rolexes. He's acting like a gangster. He's feared. He's respected, and his nephew Orlando Anderson is making quite a little violent name for himself as well as a Southside Compton Crip. They're going down to Vegas for the Mike Tyson fights, the hottest ticket in town. He's really living the movie coke dealer in Compton life. All right, so everybody knows that at a certain point, Sean Puff Daddy Combs' Bad Boy Records started to feud with Suge Knight's Death Row Records. And Death Row Records had Tupac and, for a while, Snoop Dogg and I think Dr. Dre. But so it's Sean Puffy Combs running his Bad Boy Records in New York and Suge Knight running Death Row Records in California. Keefe D, selling a bunch of birds at this point. He knows Suge Knight from childhood. They played Pop Warner football together. And I guess technically, Death Row Records, Suge Knight and Tupac, they're the Bloods. Technically, they are associated with the gang, the Bloods. And technically, Keefe D's a Crip, so they're rivalries. But I guess if you know each other since childhood, you can get around that. So they knew each other, they were cool with each other, and Keefe D also knew Sean Diddy Puff Daddy Diddy Combs, because at some point a drug dealer in New York that Keefe D knew introduced Keefe D to Puff Daddy Diddy Combs, and they went to baseball games, the three of them, so he knew both Puff Daddy and Suge Knight before it really started to get to a boiling point. Puff Daddy at one point needed a lowrider car that bounced up and down for a music video for Usher. So he hit up Keefe D in California. Hey, Keefe D, I need one of those cars. And Keefe D said, yep, I can supply one. Actually, Usher ruined it dancing on the hood. And so Sean D. Puffy Combs had to pay for the whole thing to be painted. All right, so the feud between the two, you could do a whole series of episodes on that, but it's getting heated, and it gets to a boiling point after a bunch of things happened, but it gets to a true boiling point after Tupac released the song Hit 'Em Up. And not only is it the most brutal, disrespectful diss track calling out all of Bad Boys and Puff Daddy and Biggie Smalls and the whole thing, but even worse for the Puff Daddy crew, it's catchy. It's good. So they had everybody in the nation, since it's catchy and you want to sing along to it, they had everybody in the nation singing along to the incredibly disrespectful lines over and over again. And that is the point, apparently, from people that were around during that time, that Sean Puff Daddy Combs decided, all right, enough of this. We're not just going to sit here and allow tracks like this, allow him to say stuff about us like this. So he decided that Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, and Tupac Shakur needed to go. And this is where Puff Daddy gets really lucky. And so he had been using Keefe D and the Crips as security for his shows, because the Bloods in California, Tupac and Suge Knight and all of that crowd, they hate Sean Puff Daddy Combs. So if Sean Puff Daddy Combs is going to California to do a show or this or that, technically he's in and knows the rival to the Bloods, the Crips. It's Keefe D, it's all those. So he would make sure to call Keefe D, hey, I'm coming to California. Is it cool? Can I give you guys a bunch of tickets to my show? That way I'll be protected against the Bloods. And so he knows each other. And so once Sean Puff Daddy Combs decide that's it, Suge Knight and Tupac gotta go, he contacted the rival gang member, Keefe D, the big coke dealer. He's known him for a long time. And apparently in a hotel room, they start talking about setting up the hit, just the early stages of setting up the hit. They talk about $1 million to do it. Keefe D says, yeah, we can get that figured out. But there's a few different rumors. Some people think some money was paid at some point, this and that. To me, it sounds like that they were talking about it. All right, like $1 million, we got to do it. All right, okay, we'll talk later. We'll talk soon. And then it just happened to be a big Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas, September 7th, 1996. And this is where those bizarre, that is just wild moments start happening. So, legendary boxer Mike Tyson, to go to a fight at that era, he was a little bit past the peak, but still, to go to a Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, that really was the ticket. He was knocking dudes into the stratosphere, wrapping heads around, jaws getting stretched out. And Mike Tyson had gone to prison for a couple years, had his crazy rise, and then gone to prison for 3 years, got out. They booked a fight for him. He had to postpone that fight because of a broken thumb. Everyone was like, is he faking that? Is he still training? Is Mike Tyson still in shape? Is he going to be the Mike Tyson before prison? And so this is the second fight outside of since he got out of prison, and he wanted to walk out to a Tupac song. So Mike Tyson contacted Tupac and said, I'd like to invite you to the fight. I want to come out to a Tupac song. Bring your boys. I'd love to have you. And Tupac agreed. So even to this day, there's a clip where Mike Tyson talks about feeling guilt. Like, if I wouldn't have invited Tupac to Vegas, he probably wouldn't have been there. Maybe he would have come anyway, but ugh. And so Mike Tyson invites the whole Bad Boy Bloods crew out to Vegas. Separately, Keefe D, who's just a rich coke dealer in Compton, they decide, let's go to the Mike Tyson fight. We got a tub of money from the coke sales. Might as well. So they rent from a Compton car rental place a white Cadillac, and they drive from California to Vegas for the big fight. They get their room, and they get, ready to watch the big fight. What's funny is there's rumors that Keefe D didn't even have a ticket. He says, we got a ticket from a scalper, and we were in there, but then other people were like, no, he didn't even get a ticket. And I think that rappers have a little bit of an insecurity that, they like to fantasize about the gangster lifestyle and romanticize about that gangster lifestyle. And you see a lot of rappers do really stupid stuff and put themselves in stupid situations to try to prove that they're real, or that they're with it, or that they're actually a gangster. And it's like, dude, just don't put yourself in dangerous situations. You're just an artist. You're a musician. Go and make music and stay away from these. So it's like the rappers have an insecurity that they kind of want to be who they fantasize about and romanticize about. But then I think the gangsters like Keefe D are jealous of the rappers, because the rappers get to flaunt and brag and be out there and be celebrated, and they're not really hurting their community by selling everybody poison. So there's this weird circular, the gangster coke dealer Keefe D's like, those rappers. And then the rappers kind of look down at the grimy gangsters like, man, that's they're real in there. So it's this interesting. But anyway, Tupac, and then they have nice, good seats in there. Keefe D tries to say, no, we were in there, but other people say he didn't even have tickets. But anyway, this is where I think the commentary on this whole thing skips. Everybody skips from right now in the story to after the fight. This is what happened, but it needs to be talked about. This went down as one of the weirdest and possibly most embarrassing nights in heavyweight boxing history, completely separate from this wild story I'm telling about the murder of Tupac. And so, all right, just think, a ticket to a Mike Tyson just out of his prime in the 90s in Vegas is a hot, expensive ticket. Most people are traveling to Vegas to see the show. You're thinking, all right, we're doing a big trip to Vegas. You spend a lot of money to get there. You spend a lot of money on tickets. You probably get a new outfit. You're going out. You're gambling. It's going to be a hell of a trip. The last fight of the night, which there'd be, a number of boxing matches, and then the last one is the big Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon. What's everybody is there to see. Probably go out to dinner, and everybody's liquored up and coked out of their minds, and you head into the arena at maybe, 10:30 at night. The big fight probably starts between 11 at midnight, so everybody's in there, and they're ready to see an athletic spectacular, a battle for the ages, and the whole thing lasts 1 minute and 49 seconds. And it wasn't because there was a devastating, awesome knockout or something cool happened. The fight starts, and within the first minute, it looks like Mike Tyson completely misses, but the guy he's fighting, Bruce Seldon, does a borderline commedia dell'arte, ridiculous, cartoonish fall and falls flat on his face. That's 1 minute in. And then 20 or so seconds after that, again, just a glancer. It doesn't look like some big punch from Mike Tyson. He falls on his face again. And the ref is counting 3, 4, 5. And he's kind of just doing this, Bruce Seldon's doing this terrible acting job. And he falls back and it doesn't look real at all. And the referee at 1 minute and 49 seconds into the big fight waves it off, and that's it. And instantly everyone starts booing, boo, fix, fix. Everyone's yelling and booing and yelling fix while they're doing the interviews. And to this day, I don't think, I've checked, I don't know if Bruce Seldon has ever said why it's possibly the most obvious and embarrassing dive in boxing history, or at least on the short list. And there's some rumors that Bruce Seldon bet on himself or was paid to take a dive, and so Mike Tyson could win and go on to fight Evander Holyfield, and it's an even bigger event than this one. But I think the winning choice for what happened, and if you go back and look at it, looks like Bruce Seldon in the first 10 seconds just realizes, I don't want to be in here. Mike Tyson is coming at me. It doesn't feel like my night. It's just a matter of time before I get my block knocked off in a brutal, devastating knockout. And I don't want to go out like that. I just want to get my $5 million that I'm getting paid for this. And I want to get out of here. And he just let Mike Tyson touch him a little bit, does the cartoonish falls, act like he's dazed, and that's it. 1 minute and 49 seconds in, he's got his $5 million, and then he retired. He ended up coming back years later to try to mount a comeback, which pretty much all boxers do, but he took his $5 million and ran. But why I think it's so important to add that part of the story is think of the atmosphere and the energy of everybody pouring out of the MGM arena, 1 minute 49. Everyone feels like they got scammed. The whole thing's a fraud. You paid big bucks for this ticket, and it feels like the whole... did we get scammed? Everyone's yelling fix, and everybody's booing. And so just 2 minutes after the whole thing was supposed to start, everyone's pouring out. And at this moment, here's another thing. If this wouldn't have happened, how would it have gone? But just coincidentally, as Tupac and Suge Knight, and they have a crowd of Bloods with them, as they exit the arena, they just happen to see Keefe D's nephew, Orlando Bloom, the active Crip member, and someone points him out. Oh my gosh, there's Orlando Bloom, the Crip. If the fight would have not been a bizarre guy took an embarrassing dive, if it would have gone on a longer and more realistic, probably they wouldn't have seen each other at that moment, and then the whole thing probably wouldn't have happened. But just the whole thing comes together in such a bizarre way. So they come out, oh my gosh, there's Orlando Anderson, and Tupac, extremely stupid, goes over and starts punching Orlando, and then the rest of the Bloods that were with Tupac come over. And so in the lobby of the hotel, this is the footage that you've seen over and over again on documentaries of this. It's Tupac and Suge Knight and a bunch of other Bloods stomping and kicking and punching Orlando Anderson, the nephew of infamous coke dealer Keefe D. And then the Bloods pound him out for a little bit and then leave. Well, Keefe D's at a restaurant somewhere sitting there and hears that his nephew was just beat up by Suge Knight and Tupac. And Suge Knight, they've known each other since childhood. And in the interviews Keefe D does, you can tell he thinks rappers are kind of like wannabe gangsters. What he leaves out is gangsters like him are kind of wannabe rappers in a way. They want to flaunt and brag, because a good gangster, a coke dealer, doesn't ever brag, keeps their mouth shut, doesn't wear flamboyant clothes. But anyway, Keefe D hears, he's sitting at a restaurant, and his attitude in interviews about rappers is, you're just a rapper. This is what we actually do. Why don't you go and write a poem and say it into a microphone and leave the grimy gangster stuff to us, the real deal. You just talk about it and have a little fantasy land about it. This is actually what we do. So I'm not going to let some rapper mess with my nephew. You're going to come and stomp out a younger person than you in the lobby of a hotel? You got to be kidding me. And so all of a sudden, the hitman that the celebrity record producer, Puffy Sean Combs, the guy that he happened to hire the hit to kill Tupac just happened to coincidentally run into the guy's nephew and beat him up and punch him up. And so now all of a sudden the murder isn't the hit, or the motive isn't the hit the guy hired. It's that he beat up and punched up my nephew. And so there's debate. How did Keefe D and his nephew and the two guys they were with, how did they get a gun? Keefe D has said that they had a gun, but the story that seems to be right is he contacted a guy named Zip. There always has to be a guy named Zip in these type of stories. And Zip had the 9mm that was used to kill Tupac. And so they get the 9mm, they're in the white Cadillac that they rented, they're driving around for hours and hours trying to find Tupac and Suge Knight, and they're driving around and they hear girls go, oh my God, that's Tupac. They're screaming and they go, oh my gosh, that's him. And according to Keefe D, Tupac was kind of hanging out the window doing something, and girls are screaming, oh my God, it's Tupac. So they flip around, come alongside him in the white Cadillac. Allegedly, Orlando Bloom, the nephew of Keefe D that got jumped right after the fight in the lobby of the hotel, he's the one that sprays the black BMW that Tupac and Suge Knight are in, sprays it with bullets. Tupac is killed. Suge Knight gets one grazed on the head, and they drive off. And a wild story is apparently the girls that were like, oh my God, it's Tupac. They witnessed the shooting. Oh my God. And then they started following the white Cadillac, Keefe D. And Keefe D, it's kind of a funny moment. He's going, we were like, that's crazy. You're following a car full with grimy Southside Compton Crips that just shot up a car. So those girls are like, follow them. We're going to save the day. And so they're following them for a while. And apparently someone in the white Cadillac started shooting back. And then they were like, all right, I guess we're not following them. And so they drive back the white Cadillac to Compton. They have to bring it to an auto body shop to have the bullet holes, because the Bloods in Tupac and Suge's car, they shot back. So they have to repair the bullet holes, get the whole thing painted. They drop the car back off at the rental car place, and then they're like, okay, well, that was totally crazy. At some point, Biggie calls and goes, was that us? Saying like, was that the hit? What happened? And according to Keefe D, didn't say anything. He just didn't respond. So saying like, yeah, that was it. And then the Colombian Connect, remember, he and Keefe D have a multi-million-dollar business. It's been going for a while. The Colombian Connect meets with Keefe D and essentially says, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. We have a multi-million-dollar thing going, a really good thing. And in Vegas, you guys kill the most famous rapper. You couldn't get more publicity than killing Tupac Shakur. You're an idiot. Our deal, I don't know if he said right at that point, our deal's off, but he essentially said, can't believe you did that. I'll be in touch. And he turned around and they never saw each other again. So that really ruined Keefe D's. All of a sudden, Keefe thought he was going to be this rich guy. Everything's going good. What could go wrong? And he loses the Colombian Connect. He really never gets back to the heights that he was, which is probably why he started blabbing about the whole thing as he gets into later in age. He had had cancer. He's facing his mortality. I think he thought, I want to make some money off this thing. I'm going to come out with a book. He comes out with Compton Street Legend, and the whole selling point of it is the last remaining member of the Tupac Shakur murder tells his story. But anyway, I want to get ahead of myself. And so brings down his big Colombian operation, can't get to those heights again, doesn't have the money that he had, and some years go by, I think it's around like 2009, the DEA or local California cops put a big investigation together against Keefe D. They bring Keefe D in and they slap a fat binder on the table. All right, Keefe D, this is the case against you. We know everything. We're bringing you down for cocaine and PCP sales, and we got all your family and friends, and we know everything. And at that point, they struck what's called a proffer deal, which is, it's agreed that the criminal and the law enforcement sit down, and if they feel that the person, the criminal, is totally honest and being, not hiding anything, not trying to lie about anything, then they can get the information, and the person doing the talking, in this case Keefe D, can't be charged with the crimes. So Keefe D tells them the whole story, thinking like, I'm good, I'll just get it all out. This is what happened. My nephew, they jumped him in the hotel. The law enforcement in Vegas and California, they were really frustrated that years had gone by. They hadn't made an arrest. The timing of this one too, it's like cable TV was at its absolute peak in maybe 1999, 2000, 2001. And so it happened, the murder happened in 1996. They made a couple documentaries, a VH1 type documentary, and then cable is where everybody was during that time, and they just showed it over and over and over again. So there's these, it's just always out there. They haven't made an arrest. The biggest high profile murder, not an arrest yet. They're lost. They can't do it. And so they really wanted to know what the hell happened. And so they offer Keefe D. They knew he was involved. So Keefe D spills it, thinking, I'm all right. I'm good now. I told the cops the proffer deal, and everything that I said in there is off the table for me to get in trouble. Well, I guess a technicality is anything said in the proffer in that meeting you can't get in trouble for, but that doesn't mean if you go out and start blabbing your mouth in every podcast and interview and you write a book and the whole thing. But what gets a little bit, I don't know, there's a lot of corrupt cops during that time, and at some point after the proffer deal, the detectives hit up Keefe D and they say, we're putting out a book. Okay, do you need any protection? Do you think you're going to get killed once we put out a book and tell the story from our angle? And so it's like, all right, they're putting out a book. You could see how Keefe D, he's a little bit resentful. He never got back up to his peak success, and that one night took everything down, and his nephew, Orlando Anderson, ended up getting killed in some gang nonsense. And I think he thought, I want my little place in the history books, because without that story, I was a part of the Tupac thing. No one wants to interview. He's not going to be on any of the big podcasts, Vlad TV. That's the big interesting thing that he has. So I think he wanted his place in the history books. He wanted, just like the rappers get to do, he wanted to go on the big podcasts and the big shows. And he ended one of the podcasts, the Vlad TV, with, I beat cancer, I beat the United States government, and I beat the streets. And law enforcement have come out since then and said the reason we finally did decide to actually arrest Keefe D is because of all of the times he admitted it in the podcast and the book and the stuff he said in the proffer agreement, none of that. And so how would you, if I was his defense lawyer, if he finds one that'll show up, this is how I would defend Keefe D. I would say, no offense to Keefe D, my client here, but he is an idiot. He's a pathological liar. He's insecure that he didn't make anything out of his life because he's just a coke and PCP dealer. He's lying. He wants the clout. Every high-profile murder has a couple weirdos coming out trying to take credit to get their names in the history books. That's what he's doing. The book that he came out, the whole thing is fantasy, the same way a rap song, if someone says, I killed everybody that I see, yeah, in a rap song, you can't bring that into court. So his book is art. He's a moron. He's a pathological liar. And to put this 60-year-old lying, insecure man in jail for the murder of Tupac Shakur would be absurd. The law enforcement that arrested him are just mad they couldn't close the case. It was their big case of their career, and they couldn't close it, and they're mad that he was doing podcasts, talking complete nonsense. So what are we doing here? That's how I think that I would defend Keefe D. We'll see how it goes. I know another story that kind of reminded me. This one kind of reminded me. It's pretty funny. So there was a huge heroin dealer in Harlem here in New York in the 70s. And the story goes, he had some days where he made over $1 million. Apparently made hundreds of millions of dollars total. And he was so smooth with it and kept such a low profile that he wasn't on any law enforcement radar of any kind. And he goes to a Muhammad Ali boxing match, and he said that he saw other dealers that were less successful than he was at the boxing match, and he was wearing a nice suit that he had bought, really expensive suit, but the other less successful drug dealers were wearing these really flashy looking fur coats. And even though his suit was really nice, he felt like he got upstaged a little bit by less successful dealers. No. And so for the Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier fight here in Madison Square Garden in 1971. He goes, no one is upstaging me tonight. And he bought a $100,000 floor-length chinchilla fur coat with a $25,000 matching hat, walked into the fight, had really close tickets, and got on law enforcement's radar for the first time because of the stupid coat. The law enforcement were at the fight and go, who is that guy? How does he have that coat and tickets that close, and we don't know who he is? And he said he left that fight a marked man, and it slowly went down. Another hilarious story about that guy, his name is Frank Lucas, is he was buying businesses to launder the never-ending pile of money that was coming in from selling heroin. And he bought a grocery store, and it was successful, and he bought another business and it was successful, and he needed another one, and he bought an upscale dry cleaner on Broadway here in New York, and he thought, all right, this is great. And there was two people that ran the upscale dry cleaner. Well, one day, soon after he bought it, the two people that ran it couldn't come. I don't know if they were sick, but they both couldn't come that day. They called him, who's now the owner of this dry cleaner, and say, yeah, we can't make it there that day. And so he goes down there, and there is a rich socialite woman pulling her hair out, going, why is there no one here? I need my shirts. I dropped off my shirts at the upscale dry cleaner to have them cleaned. I have an event. What is going on? What kind of amateur operation is this? The door's locked. It says it should be open. Where are my shirts? And Frank Lucas is just a heroin dealer in Harlem. He has no idea what's going on in the dry cleaner or anything, and this lady's just screaming at him. And Frank Lucas just said he's looking at her and getting yelled at, and the whole thing was so stressful, he just turned around without saying anything, got into his Rolls Royce, and drove away, and never came back to the laundromat. Didn't take any of the money. He left the money, everything in there. He just walked away from the business and never thought about it again. I thought that was really hilarious. But I'm going to cut it off there. Well, I guess I should just reiterate how lucky Puff Daddy got. How amazing is it that you hire a hit, and it just so happens the person you want dead jumps the hitman's nephew, and then the hitman gets back at him for jumping his nephew before any money is paid or anything. So you're like, wait, so it's done and I didn't have to pay any money, and that's couldn't have gone better, because if they hadn't have jumped Keefe D's nephew and it hadn't happened that night, that probably would have gone on, and Puffy would have really set it up and really paid money. And once you actually pay money, it's hard to get away with it. They probably would have blown up the whole thing, gotten Keefe. If Keefe D didn't rat him out, they would have followed the money. But I'm sure many times Puff Daddy Combs has sat back and thought, wow, I could easily be in the spot that Keefe D is right now a long time ago. If it would have just gone a little bit differently, if Bruce Seldon wouldn't have taken a fall a minute in, if they hadn't gone down there, the whole thing, so many weird things had to happen for it to go down like that. And I think that makes it a story for the book. So I will cut it off there. See you guys next time. Why? Stivin' why?